Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. We're going to talk astrology today. It is the Catalyst Astrology Report for the week leading up to the 8th of October, 2021. So today is the 1st of October. We're going to be talking about the weekend astrology, the new moon, which is on the 6th of October, and just get an idea of what this week is really going to bring about. So welcome back, everyone. If you're new to the channel, welcome. It's so great to have all of you here. I truly, truly appreciate each and every one of you for not only being here and supporting this work and this channel, regardless of what platform you find yourself on, but also supporting your own work, supporting your own process and this journey together. Because all hands on deck, right? We all need to be present and involved at this point. And I've been saying that for a while, and many of us, we know this. We know this. So there's one thing I want to actually, well, there's lots of things to talk about. How's everyone feeling? First of all, are you feeling emboldened by this Leo moon? Because I know I am. In spite of even more stressful situations, I lost another family member last night, and at this point, it's, yesterday I just hit a wall where I couldn't even feel anything anymore, and there was nowhere to go but up. So, and like I said, the Leo moon is really helping us feel emboldened and giving us some courage and some blood literally rushing to our head, right, to give us the strength and the tenacity to really move forward. My father has been moved to another city, to a bigger hospital, because they cannot handle the repairs that they have, that they need to make on his lung that they have mutilated several times through his surgery. And I'm having some very difficult feels about that whole situation, for him to be going to a city, to be going further away from home. But for whatever reason, he is sticking around. So he's going through his own process. So I hardly ever do this, but I think in this case, I would really appreciate people, I'm burning some Palo Santo here. I would really appreciate people taking just a moment to say a prayer for my dad, specifically to guide him through this process, give him the strength for his healing, and to not lose his will and his hope as he is embarking on one of the most difficult processes in his life. So anyway. So there's that. I want to talk about making correction to something that I've been reporting. And I think that this is an important teaching moment, a teachable moment here about what it means to recognize when you've been wrong about something, and to come to terms with it and accept it and actually use it as a means to grow and to get better at something. So I want to show you something that it hasn't been completely wrong. I shouldn't be so hard on myself, but I have been explaining something incorrectly that for whatever reason today, I just came to I don't even know what brought it on, but it was just something like, oh, I should make sure that I'm talking about this correctly. And I don't know where it came from. I guess it's just time to talk about it in this way, or it was just this moment where you realize, that's not exactly right. And it's important to realize when you're not exactly right, because it's all about our perception that is the filter for the truth, right? The truth or reality is modulated and it's shaped by our own perception and what we know and what we don't know. And, that can very much be used against us, and has been for a long time. But I think that there's something to be said for, it doesn't necessarily impact your credibility or your humanity to be like, oh, I made a mistake and I'm going to explain to you why I made this mistake and explain to you what I've learned about this mistake. And in fact, it just makes you that much more knowledgeable of a person. And as far as, I can tell, it actually does increase your credibility when you're willing to not attach your sense of self-worth as a human being to these ego-based types of conditions that really do come about from a lot of superficial things. And a lot, oftentimes when you're in a position where people are listening to you, they in some ways are gathering guidance from the things that you say, and you don't want to mislead people. And I think the best way to do that is to realize when you've been wrong about something and be like, oh, damn, that's not exactly right. And I've been telling people the wrong thing about it this whole time. So it's not totally wrong, but I think that clarifying this is actually going to make a big difference. And understanding this is going to actually make a big difference for all of us, because there is a lot to there's a lot to lose here without understanding the nuances of some of these things. And oftentimes it gets either overgeneralized and we don't really understand what it means, or things are shaped in a specific way. So I want to explain something about the Schumann. I'm going to check in with the chat real quick here. Moon conjunct Pluto at 11 degrees Libra here. Ouch. You're going to have quite a day, Veronica. Red October is upon us. That is definitely where we're at right now. And when we talk about the new moon, we're going to talk about how important it is to find your still point, because it's about to get so real. I can't even tell you. I always tell on myself. That was hard for me as a young person, because I was, I valued, and other people valued, my intelligence, that when I was wrong as a young person, it was really devastating to my little ego. I'm going to tell you a story real quick, and then we'll get into this, because I do want to explain this. And we have a lot to talk about with the astrology. When I was like 10 years old, I got my first B on my report card, and I can't tell you how devastating that was to me. I cried so much, because I was like, my whole future is tainted now. My perfect streak of A's along, across the board is tainted. I'll never be able to go back from this. And it was just a B, right? And so it's that kind of pressure and that kind of expectation that gets kind of piled onto us that will keep us from making mistakes that we will learn way more from than if we're just perfect all the time. So, but at this point, it's not about me or about anybody else. And I really wish more people would actually, part of the reason we are in this mess now is because of an unwillingness for people to realize that they also are not perfect, and that they have been, their perception has been intentionally conditioned so that they don't ask questions, that they don't see that they have been deceived. And it really is going to affect a large amount of people because of this very, this is a very Chiron conversation, actually. I didn't even think about it until just now, how much this opposition between Mars and Chiron right now, and the sun, right? At that 11 degrees of Libra, by the way, Veronica, bam, you are in some ways, like, you are kind of primed with your moon conjunct Pluto at this degree to really bring some stuff up. I'm curious, tell me what house, yeah, this conversation is very present. Oh, Barbara, thank you very much about what you have to say about my dad and my family. It's been a rough 2 weeks. It's been very hard, and I've already kind of gone through my own dark night about it. 10th house. Okay, so this is a great teachable moment in astrology as well. Your moon conjunct Pluto. So Pluto in evolutionary astrology in your 10th house, or in your natal chart, is going to show you where your soul's default setting is for transformation, right? That you've already, at a soul level, you transform through where Pluto is in your natal chart. And so to have the moon as well connected to that place, not only are you able to transform like you've already done in your past lives, past incarnations, past multidimensional perspectives, you've already learned, and you already have the signature of transforming yourself at a soul level through this ability to 11 degrees Libra. This is such a great conversation now. it didn't even occur to me until just now. This is great. And you're saying how present this is. This 11 degrees of Libra very much is about the bottleneck that often happens when we've accumulated a bunch of knowledge through the course of our study and whatever we do, our experiences, and how do we transmit it or instruct the other side of things, right? And so the Sabian symbols kind of got this professor, right, that's got this classroom of young students, but the professor is older and is looking up over the book that was part of the accumulation of the professor's knowledge, and then having to see the humans as humans, right? So you see that there is a necessity to balance these two aspects out. And with Chiron today, that is so much right now about trying to consolidate all of our ego right now into like some sort of protective shell. You could see how this opposition is pulling that apart, and the tension that it's creating is kind of forcing us all into this moment. And so being able to even just have this conversation is in of itself like showing this. And for me, it's in my second and eighth house, right? The resources that you have versus the resources that you create as a result of your shared experience. And any kind of communication, any kind of relationship that you have is creating a shared resource in some way. And so again, there you go, right? When you're in a position where you are transmitting information, you are teaching other people, you are facilitating some sort of relationship or situation, that does create a shared experience. And so I can see, oh, that's very interesting. So for Veronica, for instance, right, since we're going to use her as a model in this situation, with the moon and Pluto in the 10th house of destiny and mission and public life and professional life, she's already not only transformed herself and her past incarnations through this ability to bridge the gap or get through the bottleneck of accumulation versus application of knowledge. But because her moon is there as well, it makes it directly accessible to her present subconscious and intuition, and allows her to be a mouthpiece in a public way in order. So it's like what you've done in your past incarnations that has allowed you to transform through this dynamic at a soul level is able to be like, you're able to be like a mouthpiece because you can intuitively feel into what you've already done and present it as part of your professional or public life. Wow, that's incredible. Very incredible. I pulled the Lover's card before this transmission started. Well, there you go. The balance there, right? The Lovers, that is the Gemini card. In my youth, I never admitted mistakes. It was a learned skill. Yes, that's how exactly. And I kept a lot of secrets because of that too. And I'm very thankful that I got myself out of that like a couple of years ago, because it really destroyed a lot of relationships and really destroyed me in a lot of ways. And once I got over a really big secret that I was holding and had, the grace of somebody's forgiveness because of it, it made it so much easier to just be like, oh, I screwed up. So Chiron would argue this public voice. Absolutely, right? Because it's in your fourth house where you are feeling where your personal power is coming from. Okay, so there's our little lesson here. So let me explain here. Thank you, by the way, Veronica, for allowing us to all learn from your personal chart and your this dynamic for you. Very, very important. And the Lover's card, right? That is about the Gemini dynamic of the commitment to that other aspect of self, or the mirror or the opposite of what is, right? The Gemini twins of past and future, of yin and yang and masculine and feminine, where are distinct entities that haven't been synthesized yet, but you still have to live in the polarity. And I think that that's an interesting dynamic that's for you, talking about that, how Chiron is in your fourth house, and then Pluto and the moon in your 10th house with Mars now as well. Like, you are kind of living dualistically in these two dynamics because of how they're pulling on these very intense areas of your chart. Very, very interesting. Oh, you're so welcome. You just got a little free mini reading. That's really cool. Okay, so let me explain to you what I made a mistake about, and we're going to learn about this together because this is important. Because when you realize what the mistake was and how important it is to correct it, it's going to make everything else make way more sense now. Okay, so we're looking at the Schumann, right? Can you guys see it? Yes. All right, so what I've been explaining wrong, it's not so much that I've been explaining the concept or the definition of wavelength and frequency incorrectly, because frequency is the number of cycles per second of oscillation, the wavelength itself per second. That is what frequency is. And so light and sound, anything that travels in a wave function has a frequency. And so how many cycles of a wave per second is the measure of frequency. And so when we're talking about sound, the best way to understand what the frequency is going to impact is the pitch. So when you are listening to any kind of music, for instance, even just a C major scale, every note going up the scale is going to have a different pitch, right? And so it's going to have a different frequency. Just like light, each color of the visible light spectrum, just for instance, it goes the whole spectrum, but each color in the visible light spectrum has its own frequency. It means there's so many oscillations per second, therefore it has its own unique color. And as you change, and the color is the visual change in pitch, right? And so this is why the bowls, Tibetan bowls or crystal bowls that are different pitches are corresponding to different colors because they're corresponding to different chakras in your body. Okay. So there's frequency. Now, when we look at the Schumann, what I've been incorrectly describing when we see the Schumann spike up here, it's not frequency, it's amplitude. And there's a big difference. And the fact that it clicked now is based on research I've been doing over the last couple of days about how frequency and vibration, repair DNA. So amplitude is how big the wavelength gets. So you see here, this was yesterday, there was a big spike in the amplitude, right? And so you see the A right here. So when you see these big white spots, for instance, the amplitude is not the frequency changing, it's not the pitch of the electromagnetic field that's changing. That actually stays fairly stable. And you can see that at the bottom of the chart, right? You're looking at between 7 and 8 hertz. And so yes, it is moving certainly through that range, but it's not like going so, because if it went that high, if it went up to 60, 70, 80 hertz, like that's outside of the range of what we could handle. Like, well, not could we handle, that's but the earth is not going to change the pitch of her electromagnetic field that much, right? It's going to hover within this range here. And you can see that here with frequency. Now, the amplitude is a different story. And if frequency is pitch, amplitude is how loud it gets. So it's like, just if you think about, volume, basically. So the amplitude is going along, and then it shoots up and gets really loud. That's the amplitude. Going along, and then just a couple hours ago, shot up again, gets really loud. So the pitch hasn't necessarily changed, although you can see that it does change. It does vary within this smaller range between 7 and 8 hertz, basically. It does change, but when the Schumann spikes, it's the amplitude. So if you think about it as literal waves in the ocean, it's like when the Schumann spikes, it's because the wave gets really big, right? It's not so much the cycle of waves per second that's changing, it's how big the wave gets. And that still has an impact on us as well. Just like if you're listening to music and it's the same pitch and then you increase the volume, you're still going to get it's still going to have an impact on you. But I've been describing it incorrectly because I'm saying what I had been saying is that these spikes in amplitude have been spikes in frequency, and that's not right. And I'm glad that I caught that finally, because that makes a big difference in the way that we understand frequency, vibration, and amplitude, and the science of it as well. Anyway, and then that just like went into a whole conversation that is astrologically significant today, which I really actually appreciate. So, what best way to donate? Let's see here. Best way to donate. If you want to donate, yeah, I've been pretty lazy about my Subscribestar page because nobody was subscribing. So I would say the best way to donate is to go through PayPal, and you can donate at my email, which is in the description box if you want to copy and paste it, but it's catalystenergies@gmail.com. Wow, that would be awesome. This idea of mirroring seems very big right now. I feel like I walked through a mirror of polarization recently. I guess that's partially my North Node in Gemini. It's like this looking glass thing that seems to be very relevant right now. And there's something about the balance in the mirroring that's going to be really important in this upcoming new moon. So let's get into the astrology now that I've shown that. So yes, there's been spikes in amplitude, which means that the electromagnetic field isn't changing in frequency as much as it is getting louder. There's big, like we'll get a wave that's much bigger and it'll hit us, and so we notice it more. So that's the thing that I have to correct. It's not that the frequency is oscillating faster, because it's not. I mean, it is a little bit, but really it's about getting hit with a big wave. And if you look at, let's look at it real quick. If you look at the geomagnetic stuff for today, actually, you can see that the CME is landed. And it's not huge, but look at all the density around us right now, and you can see the ripples coming off of the density of the magnetosphere. Like there is a lot going on, and even down here, the pressure, right? There's a lot of pressure that's happening as well. I mean, all of that, you can see on the scale that the pressure increases as you get to this side of it, and it's just, look at it, it's everywhere around us. There's so much pressure, and part of that is because the pressure and density are what balance each other out, right? The density of the coronal mass ejection and the plasma and the speed of it. And if we were to look at more about this, we would see that, the speed of the CME as it's reaching us, really spiked up in the last 12 hours or less. And so you can see there's a ton of pressure, and we all feel it right now. I mean, I'm not surprised that people are exiting. It's been very sad, but the other person that passed away was the husband of the person who passed away 2 weeks ago. So it's not surprising to me at all. I'm not surprised that my dad is having continued medical problems that are just they're not getting worse. They're just narrowing down to what they have to do, and it's getting more intense for him. So I'm not surprised. And look at it. We can all feel the pressure building. And with the new moon, we also know that Pluto's going to station direct. And if you haven't seen the equinox report, I talk a lot about October, because this time is going to really test our ability to stay in our still point, right? And almost walk between the worlds, because once we get to November and we're in full-on Scorpio season, that's when we're really going to start seeing some hard truth. So let's just get into the astrology. So I showed you this already the other day, which is this incredible chart for today. I've never seen anything like this. Now, granted, I haven't been an astrologer for 30 or 40 years, but in the time that I have been looking at charts every single day, I haven't seen many that look like this. I mean, this cross central point with these three oppositions. We have two mystic rectangles. We have two kites. We have this air trine with Black Moon Lilith on top of the North Node. I mean, it's intense right now. There's no doubt about it. And we've talked about today for a long time. So let's go over it and see where we're at with things here. All right, guys. So the moon is in Leo. We've already mentioned that. People are feeling emboldened. We're having a very personalized and intuitive sense of, the sovereignty and the solar rebirth and the blood rushing and creative expression, and really feeling like our individual selves and what we are passionate about, what brings our joy. And it's, from, like I said, an emotional, from very emotional and feeling based, because the moon it transits very quickly. So these are passing feelings and making all of these connections so that we are going through all of these experiences throughout the day that are connecting us to all of these different experiences of like Rahu or the North Node, and then Chiron and Saturn. And so we'll just one step at a time here, okay? So first, we found that let's see where we're at here. This is the moon. This is later today. So I just wanted to show you again the incredible geometric configuration, how it's so balanced, which is, even though it's all oppositions, there's so many opportunities that are surrounding it in order to harness the energy of these oppositions. We have kites, we have two mystic rectangles, so these are sextiles and trines that surround these oppositions. The air trine that is part of two different kites. You can kind of see one right here where the nodal axis is the spine, and then you see another one right here where Saturn and the moon in opposition are the spine. That's a big one we'll talk about today as well, because that's really setting us up to find, again, this permanence in our soul in the opposite, in the face of this cosmic egg breaking open that we've talked about already. So let's look at the chart for today. Here we go, guys. All right. Okay, so you can kind of see on here the oppositions, but you don't see it nearly as well as on the other chart. So let's take a step back in time here to show you. So the first thing that's happening like overnight is the overnight, early morning, late evening, it just depends on where you are, this sextile to Rahu, or the north node of the moon, our karmic destiny, and that would be a trine to the south node, or our karmic history, where we've already mastered at a soul level, and the tail, right? The tail of the dragon, where we're headed, or where we're leaving from, right? So the tail is like the momentum that's pushing us forward, but it's very much not the direction we're going. And so the head is absolutely the direction we're heading, which is, oh, look at that, it's Gemini. And the Lover's card, as Veronica had so aptly pulled in her reading today, this is the direction we're headed. Is this Gemini aspect. This is the mind. This is the dialectic. This is the simultaneous past and future, yin and yang, distinct and separate experiences that are two sides to the same coin. It's the mirror image, right? That's exactly what Gemini represents. And so this is where we're headed. Sagittarius is the synthesis, right? It's the understanding. It's the big picture. It's the alchemical merging. And if you have been watching the transmissions this week, you know that 2 days ago, we had the art of the alchemy in a reversal position, the splitting apart, the nuclear fission, right? It still releases a ton of energy, but it's splitting apart, right? Splitting apart rather than synthesizing things. And with the cosmic egg cracking open where Saturn in Aquarius is, boy, oh boy. I mean, you can really feel the pressure of this coming down in your own life, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've interfaced with in the last 2 or 3 days in their own way that are like, now it's at their doorstep, whatever it is, right? We're all facing it very directly. So the moon is making this connection to the nodes, right? Her own nodal axis. That's something to consider, because it is the moon that is our subconscious realm, our feeling-based landscape, and to make a connection to her own nodal axis is giving us direct connection to our soul's karma through our intuition and our feelings. And so with the sextile, like we've talked about before, this is an investment opportunity. 4 degrees Leo. Let's start getting into it. This is the will to conquer our animal nature. So that's something to consider about Leo. It is the animal nature. It is the Kundalini that is coiled at the base that gets released, right? It is the blood pumping through the body. It is this connection to lust and passion that is not really something that we think about. It's just us being ourselves individually, and very playful, romantic, and not imaginative playful, like joyful, right? Just playing, right? Just playing. And romance, that's like a fifth house thing in Leo, but it is really the full expression of our individual nature, and which is fire, right? It's fire. It's the sun at the center of our experience. So it's very dramatic with Leo, right? There's no subtlety with Leo at all. It's very much out front, and it's the lion, right? So this degree is this will to conquer that animal nature, and to dramatize that achievement in some ways, right? And to show, right? To impress our peers, to show our skill set in actually doing this. You know, it's like showing everybody the trophies from our hunting expedition or whatever, you know, but it's you're dramatizing it for the sake of being like, look at what I can do. And it's specifically about, look at how I can use my, it's not so much suppress or conquer in a negative way. It's like, look how I can harness this very powerful energy. Look how great I am, right? And so when we, of course, in a trine to Sagittarius as the South Node, this fire trine, right? These things are supporting each other, but we don't have to necessarily do anything about it to get the harmonious benefit. And so at 4 degrees Sagittarius, right, we are, here, let me remind myself real quick. Here we are. Yeah, the natural assistance of superior powers during a crisis of growth. And so in some ways, if we don't do anything with this energy, we can connect to where we've been, right? And the fact that in the past we've had help, we've had assistance. And where does that assistance come from? It comes from the collective belief system. It comes from the values of the society that we're operating under, and the understanding of how we can use the deep, dark truth to create a paradigm that we're all operating under. So yes, we can do nothing and reap the benefits of action. Now, where we need to put some effort into, but we can also really activate something if we invest these energies, is investing us into the moon, into Rahu in Gemini, which is much more, as we're getting closer and closer to the Pleiades in the North Node's transit, we're getting closer to a much more value-based, tradition-based, feeling and sensitivity to the natural world-based experience, right? It's not so much utilizing the power of the collective and the collective belief systems and the fire of action behind it, although that's important. Where we're headed is to really just engage individually with the natural world and the energy of the natural world, and get back to a much more, it's almost nostalgic in some ways. And so there is an opportunity that was here to really apply this dramatization. Look what I can do. I can conquer this energy, and do it in a way that is much more of an activation, right? Because that's what a sextile really allows for. It's very much about the interaction between the descent of the spirit and the ascension of the material that come together and create something new. And which seems like alchemy, and it is, right? That's a really big part of it, you know. Number 6 is the numerological connection, and the 6th house in astrology is the house where you are actually doing those things at a personal level. So I think that if we can apply this to, you know, where we are going, which is much more based in the natural world, the natural energy, value system, very sensitive to the material world. That's what the Pleiades and then Taurus, especially once the nodes get into Taurus, I think that we can, there's something to be gained here but it will take a little bit more effort on our part. If we do nothing, then we are kind of it's kind of like the collective paradigms that we've all been operating under this whole time can certainly be impressed and contribute to this dramatization of, harnessing that animal nature. So I think that's kind of interesting. I mean, in some ways, it seems very counterintuitive to what's happening outside of us. But in another way, it shows that, for as much as Capricorn and the matrix itself is being destroyed, we also have to realize that matrix of reality was created from a consensual and a willing synthesis of belief systems coming together. And without that, then there would have been no matrix that's actually created. And so maybe we need to take that into account when we are really dramatizing our efforts. So something to think about. And as we go through, let's see, that happened. Moon is in a square to Vesta, asteroid Vesta, who is in Scorpio right now. So you have this fixed square that is happening with Vesta and the moon, right? Let's see, 6 degrees. Yes, here we go. So this is really, Vesta in Scorpio is showing us that the flame at the heart of us, the sustaining spark of creativity that holds us all together, is really taking us into a place that could easily extinguish it if we are not mindful and careful. Because Scorpio is fixed water. It is the depth of the truth. It is the depth of the power dynamics and the power of our communion with each other. And there is power there, but you also have to feel it for what it is first before you get to activating it, which is Sagittarius. So it's not easy, and Venus being in Scorpio has not been easy either, but it's also giving us a lot to work with and a lot to see and a lot to feel and be real about. And we have each other. That's the thing. We can always go back to the spark that's within us in order to sustain us as we are addressing and sinking into the abyss of the truth. And the square to Leo is, it really is setting up the division that is so easily used to manipulate us, the divisiveness that is used so easily and created in a lot of ways to divide us, right? And if we realize the relativity of these social values and that there is just one natural law, and that is the truth, then everything else that comes out that's just like this constant, even down to the very simple nature of this is a war of good and evil, that in itself is enough to separate people and to create division when there is no such thing as at the very singular core of it all. We're all coming from the same place. So this square here with Vesta over in Scorpio, I think if we can realize the relativity of social values in this moment, because the thing about Leo is that you're so entrenched in your own individuality in the moment that you tend to not accept the nature of Aquarius, which is the opposite of Leo. So in some ways, it's good that we're holding our sovereignty as individuals and not backing down. But at the same time, it does keep us from actually working together to actually create something more powerful than any of us could do individually. So that square, I think, really sets that up. That discomfort of those values coming into cross purposes, I think, really sets it up. And then we have Mars coming into its exact opposition with Chiron. So we talked about that too. how Chiron, through the activation of that wound and that shame and guilt, we're kind of like trying to consolidate everything into this encapsulation because we're so desperate for like something to organize our ego, right? And to protect ourselves. That's what the ego is for, is to protect ourselves. It's the part of the psyche that allows us to survive. And it's not that this is not important. It very much is, but because Chiron's involved, of course, it's just going to be like, oh, you should feel guilty about doing that, or you need to, this is the only way that you're going to be able to actually save yourself, or instead of being a victim, right, you're just going to like totally close yourself off from everything else and just be this like seed in the world. And it really depends on where you're finding Chiron and how it's what kind of wounding and shame and guilt it's really bringing up for you. But the opposition, we just talked about it with Mars, is the fact that while Mars is at its detriment in Libra, it is allowing us to put our own thrusting out into the world of our own subjective experience, because that's what Mars does, and movement forward into balance, right? Trying to find balance, trying to find the midpoint in the scale. How do we take everything we've accumulated and then apply it to another generation that is ready to receive it, by seeing them as actual human beings and not, that's the bottleneck. You accumulate all this knowledge, and the tendency here is to just close yourself off because you're like, you know what? And I can totally relate to this in a lot of ways. And so I've been really feeling that. I'm like, you know what? I don't have to give you nothing, right? I don't have to give you nothing. And you're just like, I'm just going to pull it all in. But Mars is brave, and Mars has courage, and Mars is able to move through fear. And sometimes, even the fact that Mars is at its detriment in Libra is even more reason to kind of like dig deep into that, courage and that bravery to be like, okay, it'd be a lot easier to just wall myself off, but how do I actually take who I am and apply it to this situation in this social context of balance and fairness, right? Because we're not meant to live in a vacuum. We are meant to be with each other and to learn from each other and to interact with each other. And that's just what it means to be a human and to be in this life. And so we do have to figure something out. And Mars is a great, this is a great opportunity, and that opposition is really going to bring it and highlight it very strongly. Plus, the sun in the next 2 days is also going to come and then just highlight it, illuminate it, have us express ourselves fully in that dynamic of balancing out. So very powerful today. The moon comes into an opposition with Saturn as well. This is all happening right now, or did happen already. And there's a sense of permanence here with the moon in Leo, right? Where you're connecting to the very permanence of your soul. And basic spiritual values, which refer to our common humanity, in the face of Saturn, which is time and karma and responsibility and the form and structure of reality, showing us that the egg is cracking and this new mutation is going to come forward that's not based in our common humanity, is not based in anything that we've come from. It's going to be a totally new thing, and you can already what I'm talking about. And it's going to, when it stations direct on the 10th of October, this is where I feel like the egg is going to literally crack open and something will emerge. What it will be, who knows? We could sit here and talk about that all day, but what this is allowing for us in this moment is to feel into what is our common humanity, what are these basic spiritual values that we can each individually connect to and feel, what is an enduring archetype of what it means to be human. So, and in opposition to this, you're not stopping Saturn, right? Saturn is the unfolding of time in a 3D reality. And it is coming. Whatever this egg is and whatever it is, the cosmic egg is breaking, and whatever's coming forward is something that we are going to have to face. And so this opposition is a really good opportunity right now to feel into what are our basic spiritual values and what is our common humanity that is permanent across everything, because that's going to be really, really important to understand. Mercury is going to square Pluto again today, both in their retrograde. So we don't really need to go back over that because we've talked about it endlessly. But we do know that Mercury in retrograde is now turning the lens back on ourselves. And we are taking all of this information now from Arcturus, from Spica, and addressing our own inner process, our own mental concepts and ideas, and really using it as a time of review and using it to inform our own mental processes with this very deep knowledge of Arcturus and this path of service that Spica really represents. But of course, in square to Pluto makes it very difficult because Pluto is the very raw, very powerful, very, in some ways, very repressed. And I don't mean repressed in a way that's like negative. It's just so deeply embedded and is something that we can't really get past, right? It is the ultimate duality of material life, which is death and rebirth. And those two things have to be, you don't separate them from each other, but it's still a very raw experience that we all have to go through and is very terrifying in a lot of ways. And so again, the square there is just a friction that's going to allow us to grow and evolve in the face of that as we are turning the lens of our mental capacity onto ourselves and reviewing what we've been through so far and really taking in the wisdom from Arcturus and Spica. Let's see what else is here. The moon, there's a lot happening today. The moon is then going to come into a sextile with the sun, as we see here. And this is a really interesting degree because the sun, we're really expressing ourselves. Here's another idea about going back to source, trying to find something to connect to in a time of chaos. And the sextile, again, that 60-degree angle that is like an investment opportunity with the moon in Leo is showing that our need to involve our most vital and spiritual energies, again, Leo, in the creative act, right? And the creative energy comes from the seat, right? It comes from the base of our spine. It comes from the Kundalini, and it comes from the sacral area. That is where creation comes from. And so when we have to be like directly involved in those energies if we want to create something beautiful and significant. So we can apply this and invest this into the expression of looking to source in order to find something confused during a confused and chaotic time. So it does show that we have to actually be involved in the process. We can't just be like praying for a miracle without doing anything. That is very clear in terms of this dynamic. And in fact, it's set up in a way that we can really get something out of it if we actually act on it. We can't just like sit around and be like, please, take care of everything for me and not actually do anything. And I hope there are people that are taking advantage of this right now that maybe haven't actually taken any steps in their own life to create something new for themselves or different, because I think a lot of people have not been doing that and wondering why we're here, why are we in this situation? It's like, well, you just been sitting around doing nothing. Or just praying and not actually acting on anything. So God helps those who help themselves, right? And that's a big part of that sextile. And then the moon comes into a trine with Chiron and is in a sextile to Mars. I mean, there's so much happening just today. And we knew that. We knew today was going to be big. There's no doubt about it. So this is how we can really manage this opposition, right? Is the fact that we want to be able to move from one side to the other. We don't want to necessarily get caught in this consolidation in order to keep ourselves from healing our own wounds, because that's the thing about Chiron, is that despite his attempts and his success at healing other people, he never was truly able to use that for himself. And the only way he ever healed was to let go of the identity, which was his immortality, that allowed him to be such a gifted healer. So there is something that can anchor us, that then our consciousness can kind of wildly move from back and, move around. It's like being on a tire swing or something, where it's this huge tree. Like when I was a kid, we had a huge black walnut tree in our yard, and there we had a tire swing and we always had a swing on it. And so it was massive. So this massive tree that has been there forever is able to hold the swing while we as children play on the swing. This is really, whatever that is for you, is going to hold you while you are at an intuitive or even subconscious level, kind of swinging around, trying to figure out how exactly do you, release this bottleneck of applied knowledge and wisdom of balance and fairness. Now, the trine to Chiron, again, is that we can rely on the tree exclusively to just keep, to not move at all, right? There's the tree, and we can just hold on to the tree and not go anywhere. And certainly that is one way to do it. But also, too, we can actually apply or invest this type of energy into where Mars is, and vice versa, right? Because Mars is very much about action. And, this is a sextile, so there does require our movement on this part. We could really actually, if we just allow ourselves a little bit of play and a little bit of movement and a little bit of joy and a little bit of passion in some ways, and enjoy the process, we might find that we actually can figure out, okay, how do I take what I've learned about myself and then apply it and instruct or whatever out, give it over to the process of social balance. That's one way to do it. But we have to be involved. There's so much of this about being involved in the process today. And then Black Moon Lilith comes into a conjunction with Rahu. We've already talked about that. That's over here. And so while Black Moon Lilith is the dark feminine. And so for her to reach Rahu like that, it's really, they are coming and meeting each other and activating this nostalgia and in some ways a very strong drive for self-preservation in some ways, to actually move in this direction of just like I said, it's very nostalgic, of tradition and naturally based values where the North Node is. And for all of the negativity that Black Moon Lilith has in a mythological context, it is still the feminine, and it's something deeper than just our own subconscious and our own feelings. It's a connection to a much larger network of humanity that, if we are aware of it, is very powerful. But if we're not aware of it, then it becomes our shame, and it's something that we want to hide, or it's something that we allow to, it's like a monster that can't be controlled. So it's a very complicated type of energy, I think, Black Moon Lilith. And at the same time, the moon will, and then the moon comes into a sextile with asteroid Ceres, the goddess of the grain, and she is stationing very soon to go retrograde, by the way. So that'll be fun. And so, speaking of fun, I think the best way to really liberate the ghosts of our past, in terms of following a natural cycle, because that's what Ceres really represents, is like the natural cycle of contraction and expansion that is necessary for a healthy organism. Basically, the best way we can do that is in some ways to just enjoy ourselves, enjoy each other's company, enjoy life, relax. And this is going to seem weird when we get to the new moon, but that's exactly what we need to be doing. Everything leading up to the new moon is having us return to this very simple and restful state, because that's really where we're going to find our revitalization, as opposed to action, right? I'm not saying we shouldn't take action. because we need to participate. There's a difference there, and it's all very subtle. And I think that that's something to keep in mind, that it's not as cut and dry. In some ways it is cut and dry, but at the same time, it's just like, well, if you exhaust all of your energy by just pushing and pushing and pushing, and you don't find a balance within yourself to revitalize, then you got nothing left, right? You have nothing left to give. And so again, fashionable surroundings, escape from the work routine, relax with the people that you have fun with. This is really going to help let go of what needs to naturally be let go of in this moment. Now, what is very interesting as the moon comes into a quincunx with Pallas Athena, who is showing us how important it is to camouflage ourselves right now, use our mental subtlety and our cleverness to camouflage ourselves. It's so important. But on the other hand, we each are feeling this really strong urge and yearning to actualize ourselves. That's the thing about the combustion of Leo. It's just like, I gotta be me, right? And I think that it's really important to find the way to adjust yourself in that moment, because just being you and like putting yourself out there in that combustive way is not, it's not that it's not a good strategy, but reconsider where Pallas Athena is right now in terms of the strategy to camouflage ourselves, right? Because the thing about Pisces is like, you can't escape from everything else, right? We're all connected in the collective unconscious, all of us. And if we're if we're in an information war and we're dealing with things like mind control, we're dealing things like propaganda, we're dealing with things like surveillance at that level, we have to also be mindful that if we want to continue working in this way, that we have to be strategic about our presence. And that's, that is difficult when you are feeling this like, I gotta be me, and people are having huge rallies and they're very open on social media, and we're all doing this. And I'm not saying that exposure is a bad thing. I'm just pointing out that it's written right here in the astrology, and it's an opportunity to adjust yourself. That's all it is. It's an alchemical transmutation moment with the moon and Pallas Athena in this way. So that's today. And as we move through the weekend, the moon's gonna continue to go through let's see here. I want to look at some of the No, it's the Sabian symbols. It's the Sabian symbols by Elsie Wheeler is the one that got it. But yes, you should schedule a reading with me. Not a war, but a striving for balance. Yes. All of those things are great. We are definitely all on the same page, which is great. Let's see here. Where are we? The second. Okay, guys. So by tomorrow, the sun in Libra will have had us pass through a lot of disturbance, right? And it's only going to be in the calm waters that we are able to really very accurately reflect on what the chaos really meant. So just know that there is something to that effect coming. Like there's going to be by tomorrow some level here of leveling out, seeing things for a lot deeper meaning, getting through a lot of turbulence, being able to surface from going deep within. All of these symbols are here in the astrology. So Venus is going to sextile Pluto tomorrow, as you can see here. And again, this is very much about our ability to see the structural undertone, or the structural, the underlying structure of our communal relationships, and the capacity to acquire a knowledge of these structural factors, right? It's like an X-ray. You're able to penetrate through the superficial aspects of existence and see the actual scaffolding and the framework. And in Scorpio, we're talking about the relationships, the power dynamics in relationships, the ways that we unintentionally push forward the elite's agenda by, giving our energy to their symbols and not realizing it. I mean, branding in and of itself is a really good way to wrap your mind around this. All forms of entertainment, of course, but symbolism will be their downfall, because symbols are the language of archetypes. It is how we communicate as humans and as conscious beings. And when we give our attention, when we give our energy to it, we are infusing it. It's very ritualistic. We have to be aware of this. So Venus, for as uncomfortable it is being in Scorpio, she's going to come to this moment and be like, oh, I see the much deeper framework at work here. I feel it. I'm sensitive to it. And if you can get through, if you've managed to get through Venus and Scorpio without like totally just giving up or giving in, you're doing great, because this is a very difficult place for Venus to be. And if you have Venus and Scorpio like I do, then you know that you're already calibrated to have this intensity. And so you've been a leader through this process. So the sextile to Pluto, right? Pluto ruling Scorpio again. So being able to see into the structural, the structural factors that are under the superficial surface here, and feeling them from a very sensitive and a magnetic, right? Because Venus does represent magnetics, because she attracts to her. If we're able to really see this, we can apply this, invest this into the very real destruction that Pluto is enacting. So far, still within us, but it's slowing down and slowing down. It's pretty much coming to a standstill because Pluto is going to station direct on the 6th. So this is a really incredible opportunity with this sextile. If we see that, if we're able to look through the surface and be like, oh, I see now what's going on. And in fact, we could infuse what Pluto is doing, because ultimately Pluto's doing this whether we like it or not. So we might as well help it along in some ways by seeing the underlying factors that are part of this process. Now, there are other aspects of Pluto and Capricorn that are not in our best interest too. So again, these things are neutral in their position. It's what people do with them that makes the difference. So just keep that in mind too. And we've talked about this many times, that, you know, the elite use astrology. Don't mistake that. Absolutely. They have been for millennia. Of course they use it. This is why, and I just talked about this. This is why they craft the narrative from many different vantage points about these tools and modalities, because the reality is they use them, and they don't want anybody else to understand how powerful they really are in the process of using them. So we have to be aware of that too, that they're using them just as much as we are. And they are using that sextile is also part of the way that they are reinforcing their own plans as well. So being aware of that is really, really important. So that sextile is there. We see that the moon is going to have a quincunx to Neptune in Pisces. And again, we're really feeling emboldened. We really are. And I can feel it too. And I can see how it's going to, potentially bite us in the ass by the end of the weekend if we are not aware of these quincunxes, right? Because Neptune and Pisces, it's dissolving it all, right? Down to the very basic truth, right? The truth of source, right? The mandate down from the highest, right? That especially where Neptune is right now. The quincunx is going to force us to adjust ourselves in the face of each of us feeling like we want to be of spiritual service, and we're training ourselves to be a spiritual warrior or a messenger of some sort. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but again, we're going to have to adjust our expectations in that moment, because what we are each individually feeling or intuitively connecting to in this moment is no match for Neptune and Pisces. It just isn't. And so we have to accept that and use that energy for alchemical transmutation and for adjustment. It's not to say that we can't embrace what this is, right? This idea that we are our spirituality is in training for service to humanity, right? We're fulfilling a mission, each of us in our own way, but we have to also realize that we have to take our ego out of it. And Leo is very connected to the ego consciousness. And that is why it's so important that the sixth house never gets separated from the fifth house, because what you do with the release of your Kundalini is a big part of how the rest of that chart unfolds in the cycle. So we just have to be aware of it. And this is an opportunity to adjust our expectations. It's an opportunity to adjust what we're actually doing in that moment, and really finding a way not to force them to fit, but to practice our alchemy in that moment, right? Squaring the circle, which is really what transmutation is all about. And which is really, these quincunxes are literally putting a round peg in a square hole. And that's just not going to happen. So you have to adjust yourself or find a way to transmute these things. And I think that's okay. And I think that we've been really struggling with this. And so this is going to be a great opportunity to adjust ourselves. And speaking of that, we are going to find that the moon right after that is in direct opposition to Jupiter, which has been really, really, really supporting and advocating for us if we each individually are really disciplined and have allowed every experience in our lives to be a trainer for the ability to handle the energy of the social energy, the Aquarian energy, right? The power that moves through the collective. We have to, Jupiter is expansive. Jupiter is larger than life. Jupiter is an advocate, and it's been retrograde and is going to also station direct on the 18th along with Mercury, right? The 18th of October, the 19th, these are huge portals. 18th, 19th, and then the full moon. Oh my gosh. I can't wait to talk about that, because that is actually very directly connected to some political figures. So if you're not following me on social media and you haven't seen that post yet, I really recommend that you try to find it, because there's some really interesting dots there. So here's again this opposition. Are we able to really find the discipline and the training in a social context, in a collective context, to handle and hold that energy? Or are we going to be much more focused on individually displaying all of our badass skills, right? There's a lot of audacity and perseverance that's required to control these powerful vital energies of our Kundalini. And I'm not trying to understate that at all. But what Jupiter is really expanding within us is way beyond just our own individual nature. It is about being able to handle the full picture, the full energy of the collective. And so that opposition, again, is going to be something we're going to have to find our balance point here. Because if we make it about us and how badass we are, and miss the expansion of our within us, and Jupiter giving, pretty much advocating and giving us everything we need, including these really difficult circumstances that are a training ground. And then, if we fall into one side or the other, we're not gonna get the full picture here. So again, it's about finding the fulcrum. That's just what all these oppositions are for, finding the balance point. And you can see that we're still in this crossover here, right? Because again, the sun is going to come into an opposition with Chiron right after this. So that's Sunday. Here we go. Oh, this is the moon in Virgo. All right, so a couple things about this. Number one, we're going to have a Draco activation, all right? Because the moon's going to meet Alpha Draconis, 7 degrees of Virgo. What else? We're a great time to clean your house. I always clean my whole house top to bottom when the moon is in Virgo, all the time. That's just, it naturally happens. Like I just start feeling within me, like I have to organize everything around me right now. I have to clean, I have to organize, I have to throw shit away. Like it just happens every month. So I've stopped fighting it. And in fact, I start planning around it, because I'm just like, this is just the time, because that's what Virgo wants to do. Organize, be detailed, meticulous, purifying, hygienic, right? All of those Virgo things. And it's sometimes if it's Sometimes it can be just to like control the environment, which, it is what it is. But that's a good way to do it so that you aren't doing it in a way that's going to waste your energy, right? Is to control your own environment. And that's what Virgo really, really represents, is being able to do that. So the moon will be in Virgo, and it's going to square the nodes. First of all, as you can see, it's already early morning, is going to square her own nodal axis at that point. And so there's that control. Like we're gonna want to, like, how do I say this? Because Virgo is Earth, but it's mutable Earth, and it's ruled by Virgo. So there is this kind of like moving of reality around. And so there'll be this kind of sense that we want to find a balance in some ways, or bring polarity together to play together happily, right? If you look at the Sabian symbol, it's black and white children playing together happily. It's a great symbol, right? It makes you feel good. You're like, oh yeah, bringing together. It's beyond duality. It's taking the duality and finding a way to actually have them interact. And remember that Mercury in the 6th house is the alchemist, and it's the inner alchemy, right? And so there's going to be certainly this push in some ways to be, to I don't want to say force it. That's not the right word, but I don't know what else to say, because there'll be a compulsion, right? They'll be like, I want to control this situation, so I'm going to find a way to make these two positions interact happily together. Now, the square to the nodes is creating the friction of where our soul is pulling us, okay? So that's where the friction comes from, where the soul is pulling us. And also, too, because this is mutable earth, this is mutable air, this is mutable fire. They're all different elements. And so a square to Rahu, again, is our soul is pulling us in the direction of just re-engaging with this more natural value system, with more traditional value system, less about doing anything and more about just being in it. Whereas Virgo very much is about doing something. So just keep that in mind. And again, the best way I feel like to harness this Virgo energy, especially when the moon is there, is to control what you can. And so, at a soul level, we're going in different directions, but in this moment, you can find a way in your immediate environment somehow to get seemingly opposite things to come together. And I just clean. That's what I do. The sun is going to come in opposition with Chiron and do the whole thing over again that's happening today, right? The tendency to protect ourselves and to heal ourselves, or to heal other people, really, to bypass healing ourselves by closing ourselves off and kind of encapsulating ourselves, whereas the sun now is going to illuminate the ability to find the balance and the simplicity, right? So, and then the moon is going to come into a quincunx with Saturn at Alpha Draconis. This is important. I cannot say how important, I can say, I just can't say it enough. This is important. This is really important, because this is a Draco activation when you're talking about something coming out of a cosmic egg that is a mutation, all right? There is this sense here that we're going to have this connection, this Draco connection, right? And what are the Draco, right? They are the ones that have the potential to master their Kundalini, but for self-preservation, and it's very predatory in a lot of ways, because the reptilian mind is very, very deep within us, right? It is what allows us to survive. It's instinct, and there's something about being able to harness the emptiness of waiting for the right moment here. And the quincunx, again, will be an adjustment opportunity with Saturn, which is the marching on of time that is unable to be stopped, as that cosmic egg is splitting open. And right now it's still splitting open within us. It doesn't go direct until the 10th. So we're feeling the stir, right? You can feel whatever's in that egg start to move around and stretch it a little bit. And so, how do I say this? The Draco, whatever that means to you, right? And I have some personal opinions about how this story gets pushed in order to take away from the very human decisions that are made, right? It's really easy to be like, hey, look over here at the reptilians and they're all shapeshifters and they're really just lizards, right? Instead of looking at the actual people that are doing actual things, right? Anyway, be patient, which is really be patient. You don't want to hurry this along. In fact, you want to be able to harness the this ability to strike when the time is right. Okay. And this is where I think the quincunx will come into play, is that an alchemical opportunity to take the emptiness of waiting and actually harness it and find a way to. This is not coming through so strongly right this moment, but I do feel like that we will again have to adjust our expectations. Somebody's adjusting their expectations in this moment. That's all I'm going to say about that. Whatever is ready for this to come forward, whatever this is, and it can be different things for different people. But what I will say is that this Draco aspect connected to this is really incredible. And we will have to adjust our expectations and adjust ourselves in the face of this. And this is a really good chance to do this, right? Because the Draco starseeds, man, they really have such an important role. Right? They really do. We really do. I should say we. Because it's not all the serpent is our DNA, right? It's put right in front of us in everything that we see, right? The serpent is our DNA. It is the expression of our very biological nature. It is the blueprint. And so the Kundalini is the energy that allows that to be spread, right? Is what the serpent represents. And so we want to be able to act when the time is right. So that's what I really feel with that quincunx. Mercury is going to trine Jupiter. You can see right here, Mercury retrograde. And here it is again, right? That we are, it's like a rooster crowing at dawn, celebrating the new day, thinking that we're actually creating it, when in reality, we're just acknowledging that the new day is already, you know what I mean? It's already here. We're not actually, the rooster doesn't make the sunrise. The rooster is heralding the new day. And so if we can it's like a new perspective that's going to be born in some ways that was already going to come in, and now we can acknowledge it in a trine to Jupiter. So can we, harness this really harmonious connection here that is expanding this space within us to really be disciplined with the full amount of energy that is available to us in a social context, right? In the future, in the collective, right? All of those Aquarian things. Humanity as a whole is part of the Aquarian aspect. So we can acknowledge within ourselves, we can have this new, awakening in thoughts and ideas and mental processes with Mercury retrograde, and still remain disciplined in harnessing the full extent of the collective energy, because it's going to take somebody here like Jupiter to be like a benefactor and an advocate, because it's pretty significant. And sometimes we think situations that are really challenging, we don't realize it till afterwards. Wow, that was really training me to handle something. That's what I think Jupiter right now is really doing. It's really actually working in our favor, as difficult as it is. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, what I have been going through is not easy, and we all are going through things that are not easy right now, but that it's also expanding your capacity to really hold it together at a much larger level when Jupiter goes direct on the same day that Mercury goes direct. So there's this connection between the two of them right now that's really important to see. And let's see what else happens. And then Saturn comes into a square with Vesta, and so again there's something to be said here for being able to go very deeply, doing the deep dive into what is at the root of our consciousness. where Vesta is, right? And with that, that it's going to be hard as that egg is cracking open. I mean, that's what's so stressful about it. We all know that it's happening. We all know something's about to burst out. We can all feel it, right? And there's nothing that's going to stop it. And so that square with Vesta that is like, all right, the real energy and the real spark that is holding us all together, which is the hearth fire, the center, right? The unextinguishable flame. We need to be able to go into the very depth of our own consciousness, and sink to the bottom in some ways, not in a negative way, but just to really get into it so that we have the knowledge, and the ability to hold it together as this egg is cracking open, right? It's, wow, it's intense. Yeah. And then we come into the 4th, right? So the 4th is Monday. And so we'll just go very basically into what's going on. So the moon will be in Virgo, which means that he's going to trine Uranus, is going to be opposite Neptune, and is certainly going to trine Pluto. So this late Virgo type of energy is really going to find having us, do we feel prepared and purified and disciplined and devoted in the face of like this massive overhaul change? And with Pluto and Uranus is the trigger. Pluto is the actual power of it. Neptune, right? The surrender to the whole versus surrendering to ourselves. This is going to be, it's just going to be intense, right? And then the new moon is on the 6th. So let's look at that. And then I think we can call it a day here. So look at this. Look at this, right? This whole stack up right here. Let's go back because I want to show you that Mars is absolutely part of this new moon, right? And this new moon is about finding that still point. And in fact, with Mars involved in it, it's kind of hard right now to find there we go. We'll just leave it at that. So the moon will come into alignment with the sun, like between 6 and 7 a.m. on the 6th, and Mars is right here, all at the same degree. And look at this, directly quincunx Uranus. So at that point that all of this energy that has to do with setting the intention in terms of our own growth over the course of the month, with Mars involved, giving us the courage and the bravery to find that balance point, to find the stillness within, to find a rest in some ways, to revitalize ourselves. All of those things are immediately going to be challenged with Uranus and Taurus, that shakes up and radically reorients our material, especially in Taurus, our material reality. So right there, that is going to provide an opportunity to adjust ourselves in that moment. Really, really powerful. And we also know that Pluto stations direct on the 6th as well. And let me see what else we have. I wrote it all down. So let me see what else we have going on in terms of the transit. So the moon will be opposite Chiron. Mars will quincunx Uranus. I mean, all of the things, right? There's a direct connection to Uranus in a very uncomfortable way with this new moon. So it's almost right off the bat showing us like, okay, just so you know, this is, you better adjust yourself now because this is an idea of what it's going to be like over the course of the whole month. And especially because Pluto stations direct and all systems go at that point. The moon will then come into a conjunction on that day with Mercury, right? Mercury retrograde in Libra at this point. And this is really about our ability to just follow through with the process. That there's something very powerful by when you accept the limitations of the material world and the process and the traditions and performing your duties, right? That it's not that one side is better than the other. It's showing that there can be a sense of stability here when we allow ourselves to find whatever that process or that those duties are, right? The inherited wisdom from many generations that provide a framework, right? A framework that allows us to not really think about what we're doing, but just kind of do it, right? And so the Sabian symbol is a rabbi performing his duties. It's the idea that there is power here, in the idea that you are recognizing that framework, that religious framework, for instance, is not the only thing, but it provides a way for you to find some balance. And that's going to be really important on that day as well. And then the moon comes into a trine with Jupiter by the end of the day. Okay, so we see that that's happening here. And again, we are feeling, I certainly feel, again, it's the rooster crowing at dawn that's heralding the sunrise. It's not that we're creating it, it's that creation is just a natural process, and what we're doing is having a joyous response to what is manifesting, as opposed to thinking that we are bringing the sun up. Again, it's when we see and accept the new day that is coming, and we feel it within us, this trine to Jupiter, again, that is there is going to be, I would say, it's just going to keep getting more challenging. And Jupiter in this position has really been challenging us. And because it's been retrograde, I feel like that it has been very uncomfortable. It's been very challenging. It has really we're going through a lot right now, and everybody's going through a lot in their own way. And like, Jupiter is my ruling planet. So, I mean, it's really having an impact on me in a pretty significant way. So to have it be in this position, I think it's important to realize that whatever you're going through, especially depending on where it is in your chart and how it's connected to other things, it's important to realize that every situation is training us so that we can be very disciplined with this incredibly potent collective energy. Because it isn't just about us. It is about us in the context of humanity, of the collective of humanity, and what that means. And so when Jupiter stations direct, again, it'll be on. It'll be on. And Jupiter, Mercury will be stationing direct at 11 degrees of Libra. So remember that too, because that's where Mars and the Sun are in an opposition to Chiron. So Mercury will station direct later in the month at that same degree. And so we're going to keep, we'll get this opportunity to mentally go back and review everything and hit that point that we're at right now, with that right now is much more active and illuminating, and it's got all this fire attached to it. And then when Mercury gets there, it'll be something that we're much more thoughtful and mindful of and reviewing, and then taking that forward into the full moon, which is going to be just the full moon on the 20th. I can't even right now. So I know that that's a lot, guys, and so I'm just going to leave it there. Your comments are incredible, and I'm really, really appreciative of the interaction, self-respect, self-esteem, self-worth, self-love, self-preservation. Yeah, that is certainly all of the ways that we can utilize the self in what's happening right now, because we can't make it about us in terms of what we want. We need to see that what's happening is training us to handle the humanity's energy in general and be part of it. But you have to be a fully functioning node in the collective of nodes, right? And that's a good way to think about it. And so I appreciate that perspective, that we focus on those things that we can focus on. And so again, the moon in Leo and the moon in Virgo, especially because Virgo will cross over the point in her balsamic moon phase, the new moon cycle that started with the new moon in Virgo. So she'll cross over that point in her, as she does every month, and her balsamic phase, and it'll be in that it'll be in that trine to Uranus at that time. So something to consider as well, that we will revisit that new moon intention, which is listening, being open and to receive, being given some recognition or sign that we are on the right track, and that our courage and our determination is actually weaving something that is more than just us. And that's what Virgo really represents. And so we are in for some incredible times, my friends. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Of course, I'm still offering the flash sale until the 6th. So it's a bundle of Reiki and a reading for the lunar cycle for you. And it's a great way to determine if you have starseed markings, because it's very easy for me to be like, oh, yes, here they are. So if that's something you're interested in, then you could at least find out. And everything else is in the description box below. And I am playing catch up still. Things can change on a dime in my life. So if you're waiting for readings or portions of your readings, I really appreciate your patience. They are coming. I am working every day to get caught up right now. So thank you for your patience. It's all in divine timing too. Everything really is. And so I've really stopped getting upset or stressed or anxious about it. It just comes exactly when it needs to. So, and that's how it is here in this whole dance of life that we're in right now. So take care of yourselves, everyone. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I love you. Have a great weekend, and we will be back together on Monday. I'll see you later.